Mama, hi from Melbourne, Florida. Hi, Fred's Mama. Sharon Tuck, I'm glad that you are here. Joe Novak, good to see you. JC, Jean, good to have you here as well. Me, he's actually all full of mud and is wet. It's been raining. It's literally been pouring non-stop the last day. I don't know what it's like with you guys, but where I am, it's very, very dry. It's normally very dry. A day where it rains the whole day is quite rare. And so what this really spells is the end of our winter. Usually when it means that is the end of the winter. It's cold right now, but it is a harbinger of warmer weather. So wherever you guys are, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, sorry, winter is coming, and for us, summer is coming. Teresa, hello from Wisconsin. Loopy Lindsay says hello. Gaynor Turley. So Timmy's hasn't had the best day because he hasn't been able to go for a walk, and it's on a day like this that you sort of wish I understand you. If you say, look, it's raining. And I sort of wonder if he can, because I did say to him, Timmy, it's raining. And he didn't really beg as much as he would normally, I want to go for a walk. I sort of got the feeling he did get the message. Kitty Cat Meow, East Tennessee. Deb von Klochnet, hi from Buffalo, New York. Wee Scottish Moore, hi from Glasgow. Texas Proud, hi from Texas. Hi, Timmy, sorry you're stuck inside. I'm sure Timmy's sorry too. Raymond says raining here as well, okay. Chrissy Hohen just got here. Hi there. Gloria Fritz from Michigan, good to see you. Bridget Survey, hi from Arizona. Hi, Bridget. I guess your weather is quite similar to ours. Dry, hot, mostly dry kind of thing. Rose, hi from Alabama. Bria, what are you doing here? Bria, you're supposed to be on your anniversary, not working. Amanda Richards. Bria, I hope you're enjoying your anniversary. I hope it's been good weather, good wining and dining, good romance, good everything. Tammy Biddle, hi from Ohio. Amanda Hudson, Florida here. Bam, hi from Tennessee. Layla says hello. Praying for rain in Southern California. Yeah, I'm sure. Betty Boop, hi from Georgia. Misdemeanor from Wales. Hot here in San Diego. Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so, there's that saying, it never rains, it pours. Well, my water tank is overflowing right now. It's been dry the whole winter. Probably didn't have a drop of rain throughout the whole winter. And then in like one day, it basically has filled up. It's kind of a gentle rain, but it just doesn't stop, which is exactly what my garden needs. I know my garden is happy, definitely. We get massive cold fronts that sweep in from Antarctica, and that tends to bring our wet, windy, stormy weather. Daphne, good to see you here. Anna, we'll get to that in a second. Be free all. Is it true Don and Candace brought expensive phones? I'm not sure. Ashley Shelton, I love sleeping in the rain, especially with my roof. I've got a balcony that opens on my bedroom, and if you open the sliding door, you can sort of have the rain sort of pitter-pattering right next to the bed kind of thing, which is quite nice. Sharon says, hit like and subscribe. Okay, so to me, can I put you down? Hey? Hey? Okay, I'll put you down here. So in this live stream, what we're going to do is we're going to put together we're going to fine tune some of the pieces we've already put in place and just sort of get a slightly sharper view of the situation in the Summer Wells case, right? And although it's a play on words, I know what you did last summer. it is intentional, this idea that I do think summer was lost. The idea that when you lose someone, such as in that video about the little girl, I think in Georgia. By the way, it was actually a apartment complex pool, not a hotel pool. But that is how you can lose someone, right? But I think there's a difference between losing someone and making sure they stay lost. That's really the difference. If I write a book about this case, it'll probably be called Lost Summer, because I think it does play on the zeitgeist that's happening right now. Is the sense that for the whole world, we're losing our summers. Summer's not what it used to be. It's not that happy time. It's not that warm and fuzzy way that we remember summer. Summers are either, due to the pandemic, the way they are, locked down, or summers are, too hot or something's burning down. So this idea of summer being lost, I think, touches that chord, if you know what I mean. Let's see if somebody steals that title before I get to it. We'll see. Gone Baby Gone, yeah. So what I'm going to do in this live stream, I'm going to talk about the working theory. I'm going to talk in 3 dimensions about, first of all, Candace's 2 minutes. Do you remember Candace in her very first version of the event, she spoke about, during the Sermon on the Mount, she spoke about Summer going inside the chalet, and then she went away for 2 minutes. Remember that? She's since amended that time, but I kind of want to just focus on that. And then the second thing I want to look at is Don's part in this, and him going to the shed, right? I'll explain more about what I want to get at with that. And then the third part is the red truck. So we're going to basically be talking about Candace, Don, and then the red truck, okay? That's sort of how we're going to break it down. And then I also want to deal with a bit of intertextuality. I'll probably start with that. As soon as we hit 1,000 people watching, then I'll kick off. I want to start with a little bit of intertextuality, given this footage of the sheds, and then we can go into this working theory. If there's still quite a lot of you tuning in, then I'm going to do another little, I don't want to call it a workshop, but just a little bit of a sort of informational, educational discussion about how our thinking evolves over the course of a lifetime, and how our thinking can evolve over the course of a crime, and just how our thinking should evolve, just in a general way. And I think you're going to find that really interesting. It comes from an article from New Scientist, The 7 Ages of You, right? And it just talks about, how our thinking, I'm highlighting how our thinking evolves, but the article sort of deals with how we evolve as people, and how each age of man has got a unique perspective. And so I think that might be quite interesting to touch on in conclusion, if there's still quite a few of you in the house, that is. Okay, so we had almost 1,000 people watching. Let's just take a few comments. Corin Collins, good to see you. I see Voices Behind the Wall is in here. Patience is a Virtue is also in here. Yeah, I do think it is interesting how our thinking evolves. Okay, so there are 1,000 people in. So the first thing I want to start off with is, as I say, this intertextuality, which is when someone who might be a suspect, but someone who's at the center of a particular scene, it might be a crime, but where there's an investigation, where they are the first people to investigate their own crime scenes, right? So a good example of that is the John Ramsey case. I think it's a classic example of that, where you actually have the detective, Linda Arendt. It's probably one of the most famous or infamous gaffes in true crime history. It's a classic, where she sort of is feeling quite uncomfortable. A lot of time's going by, and she sort of feels she needs to occupy the people that are around her. And she suggests to John to go and, just look around the house or something like that. And she actually asks him to search top to bottom. And instead, John goes right down into the basement, and he's basically searching, he's investigating a crime scene, right? And so you can either say, well, he knew what was there, or that he didn't, and he was searching for clues. So he goes down there, finds the broken window, shows this and that to Fleet White and so on. But that's just an example of someone leading you through a crime scene, and then they later become a suspect, or they were a suspect to begin with, right? That's the John Benet Ramsey case. You can take it further than that, but in the Madeleine McCann case, you kind of have the same thing. Kate McCann, in her story, will tell you, she arrived at the apartment at 10 o'clock at night, and then everything that she saw, she noticed the window open, she noticed the door was so many degrees open, she noticed this and that. She's investigating the crime scene before anyone else did, right? That's another example. Another one is Amanda Knox, who arrives home, no one's there, finds all sorts of evidence, and basically investigates it kind of on behalf of everyone else, decides that's significant, that's not significant. She finds poop in the toilet, very significant, blood on a doormat, not very significant. Another example is Oscar Pistorius. He wakes up kind of in the middle of the night, and everything's dark, and he kind of gets this weird sense that someone is in his house, based kind of on nothing. And so he then arms himself, he investigates his own crime scene. And what is happening in all of these stories is that you can either say the perpetrator or the suspect or the person at the center of it controls the narrative. They tell you, they direct your attention to something. Potentially they misdirect your attention. They control the narrative, right? So the question is that happening here with Don? Is Don investigating Don? Is Don controlling the narrative? Is Don influencing the narrative? Or is Don just sort of clearing things up, that need to be cleared up? Which is it? I do think what is really interesting in just a general sense is that Don is very active, is active on social media constantly, is kind of constantly putting up new Facebook posts, clarifying his position, putting out fires or starting new ones, or whatever you want to put it. And you sort of see him appearing here, there, and everywhere, but then you don't see him, you don't hear from Candace at all. You don't hear from Grandma at all. So do you think Don's controlling the narrative, or do you think Candace doesn't really have anything to say anyway, or Grandma doesn't have anything to say? What do you think's going on? Shimmer Soul, thank you for what you do. Thanks, Shimmer Soul. Dawn Robertson, I just got here. Well, don't worry, I'm now starting with the working theory. So that was really just an introduction. So I want to start with some of the words that have been, some of the semantics that have been expressed just in the last video. And there's an intertextual element to this as well, where Don says somebody took her. right? He says that in this latest footage, somebody took her, those words. Now, there are a couple of funny things about that statement, and I'm going to go out of the Summer Wells case just to illustrate that. In the John case, it was also those are the sort of words that were used, that somebody took her, right? Also in the Madeleine McCann case, somebody took her, right? Now, how can you be, one of the ways you sort of want to address this is, how can you be so sure that that is what happened out of all the possibilities? She could have wandered off, she could have fallen, she could have wandered and fallen. She could still be hiding in the apartment or something like that. West Virginia, 2 minute is so sold out there. Okay. So I think one way to interrogate this statement is that if you took her and you're trying to hide that away, then you have inside knowledge of something. I'm just proposing this as a hypothesis, right? So let's take the John Benet Ramsey case. If you've taken her, you've hidden her away, you've written a ransom note, then, and you don't want people to know that, then you're going to say possibly somebody took her, because that's what is being presented. Do you follow what I'm saying? So in other words, if you're trying to create a impression that she was taken because of what has actually happened, then maybe you're going to do that. But how on earth can you be so sure of that? But the reason you're so sure of that is because you've been very present, you've been very involved in taking her yourself. I'm just saying that's one explanation. Cindy says a man DW mentioned was just arrested for attempting to abduct someone 3 days ago. Okay, that's interesting. Sharon says Grandma Candy is at her sister's home. Okay, so all I'm trying to say is to make a statement, somebody took her, is potentially a mirror image of I took her somewhere, and so I've got to take that story and pin it on somebody else, right? Something else that Don said was, I knew she was gone the second I got there, right? I knew she was gone the second I got there, and Chris McDonough and his expert guest have made quite a good argument and explained quite well the way this word gone can mean missing, but can also mean when someone's died. And I know when I covered the Everest tragedy, there's a significant moment where the head guide, the legendary leader of the adventure consultants team passes away, and then that they would say he's gone. They would use those words, right? And so most often I think you would say she's missing or she's disappeared, not she's gone. Gone implies something else, right? So what we are doing here is speculating, but we're speculating based on what we know, right? So we're not just speculating with no knowledge and no education. It is speculation, but we're speculating based on information we have and based on absorbing more and more information. By the way, that leader I was referring to is Rob Hall. There's this really heartbreaking call he made from the top of Everest when he knew he wasn't going to make it, to his wife in New Zealand, saying, I love you. It's one of the most famous calls from Mount Everest and one of the most heartbreaking, where he basically said, take care of yourself. She was pregnant with their daughter. And then after they didn't hear from him, they would say, well, Rob's gone. Not that Rob has died or Rob's dead, Rob's gone. Right? And I remember when I dealt with that, with these, not in a true crime scenario, it just made me think that is the way people would say or think about something like that. It's in kind of a gentle way, but it's also in a kind of firm, definitive, permanent way. Hope that makes sense. So when Don says, I knew she was gone the second I got there, you've got to wonder where that certainty is coming from. Now, it's possible that he just means exactly what he's trying to convey, is that he knew that she was missing. He knew that something serious had happened. But another possibility is that perhaps he had additional information, or perhaps he even saw her, and in that moment he was convinced that she was gone. It was obvious that she was gone. I knew she was gone the second I got there. All I'm saying is that there are different ways of interpreting that statement, some that raise flags, right? And that brings us to Candace, and I sort of want to go into this in a little bit of detail. It's also a statement that she made. And this, you might say that this is neither here nor there, and that's fair enough. Phoenix Mac, hi from Scotland. Someone's talking about the piece of candy from Grandma, question mark. Cat's out of the bag, thank you. Whatever happened to the woman, Grandma's friend who handled the media? Yeah, she did kind of come and go pretty quickly, didn't she? Annalisa Gentile, the grandmother being so quiet is highly suspicious. Heather West, thanks a lot. Good to see you, Heather. Janine Brooks, do you think they could have done Corin Matthews? What do you guys think? Teresa Fountain, Summer Wells, you're loved. Cindy, aka Skinny, greetings from Austin, Texas. Pleased to catch this live. Joe van Rooyen, I sense Don, I'm just about missing your comment, Joe. I sense Don had closure from the start, possibly because he knew what happened to Summer. He's simply filling gaps via his videos, Facebook, diverting public interest until the time the spotlight fades. Well, I don't know if he's helping the spotlight to fade. We never forget, we never forgive. Candace was raised by a woman who left her husband for another woman. Okay. Ibby Dibby, hi from, I think, Northwest Arkansas. Masterful manner. Notice the shed view was only waist up and three sides. That's quite a good point. I did notice that. Did you also notice shed, the one shed he showed the sort of upwards, so the funky shed he sort of showed more kind of the roof, whereas the other shed he showed more not the roof. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Jane McGraw, thanks a lot, Jane. So coming back to Candace, I'll come back to your comments as soon as I've completed this particular point. Do you remember Candace said she told her story? Someone went into the house, went down into the basement. I'm going to go into that in a moment. But basically the story was Summer was somewhere else, and then she went away for 2 minutes. She went somewhere and then she came back, right? And she kind of was like, I was away for 2 minutes. And I can't help, in my mind, right, take that statement after seeing Don's video and just wonder, did Candace not drive somewhere from Chalet Wells and it took her about 2 minutes? I don't think it literally took 2 minutes, but I think that you sort of say it didn't take a long time. You know, I quickly went somewhere and I went somewhere else. We don't know where she did go. We don't know whether she did help Grandma with her brace. We don't know whether she fed the dogs or any of a lot of other possibilities. But one thing that I'm just wondering is, couldn't Candace have possibly driven somewhere that took not a long time, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, but not a long time? Basically, did she drive from Chalet Wells to the funky shed? Was that where she was for that brief interval of time? Now, what I want you to think about is forget about Summer in terms of her story. Her story is that Summer went into the house, she watched her go into the house, and the boys. It's from the perspective of grandma and the boys. Think about it from that perspective, right? Meaning, take Summer out of the equation. And I think there's a reason for that. I wonder whether Summer wasn't already out of the equation anyway, meaning she wasn't ambulant, she wasn't breathing, she wasn't alive, but she was actually at Chalet Wells, right? Now, in a scenario like that, from grandma and the boy's perspective, Candace disappears for a short while. Where did she go? Well, they don't know. I'm just going out. Maybe she drives somewhere, maybe she walks somewhere, I don't know. But I'm just saying, I think I didn't know about that shed further down, and you wouldn't expect someone to walk down there. Maybe they would, but wouldn't they drive down there, right? And we know that Candace herself said she did drive frantically. She went up this way and that way. So could that account for some of Candace's driving, that she went to that shed? I don't know whether investigators asked her that question. Candace, did you drive specifically to the funky shed? Did you go up that little road? It would be interesting if she did. It would be interesting just to know whether that is true or not. But if it is true, is it possible that Summer could have been in that funky shed? Is it possible that Summer could have been placed in that funky shed? Now, one scenario is that Candace and Grandma drove from the swimming hole and went to the funky shed first. Another scenario is that they drove to Chalet Wells, Candace dropped Grandma, and then basically drove away, and Candace knows where she drove. Question is, did she drive to the funky shed? Something I just need to confirm, need to do this while I'm on live here. I think I know the answer, but I just want to be sure. But let me ask you guys. The turn off to the funky shed, I don't know if you guys have seen it on the map, if you've seen my previous video. Is it after the turn off to Ben Hill Road or before? So if you're driving to go to the funky shed, sorry, that's the shed much lower down, next to Beach Creek Road, right? If you're driving to that shed and you're coming from Jonesboro or the direction of the swimming hole, are you going to reach that turn off first, or do you have to pass the turn off into Ben Hill Road to get to that shed? So if you think it's before, put a 1. If it's after, put a 2. What do you guys think? If you're not sure, you can also go to Google Maps and just verify yourselves. But I just want to make sure here. I wish I could show this to you, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I know the answer. Yeah. So let me just turn my camera so I can show you that. Can you guys see? There's the turn off to the road. That is the road coming in from Beach Creek. There is Chalet Wells. Can you guys see that? Is that clear? Do I need to show you guys again? Thanks, Joe. Thanks a lot. Okay, so just to be clear, if you are coming from Jonesboro or let's just bring this map out a bit further, or Kingsport. So if you're coming from the swimming hole or you're coming from Jonesboro, then and you're wanting to go to Ben Hill Road, then that shed, you'd have to drive past the turnoff into Ben Hill Road, which would be a left turn, right? You'd have to drive past that entry point to get to the funky shed, right? Now think about what we're talking about. It's an emergency. Don talks about it takes 30 minutes to drive what is normally a 45-minute journey. He's driving, really fast. He's trying to get there as soon as possible. And then he doesn't even kind of go, he doesn't turn off at the first go home. He kind of passes it. He passes that turn off. And what's kind of quite convenient here is he's still, this shed is right next to kind of a main road, right? It's right next to, I won't say a highway, but a traffic artery that you can kind of move up and down with quite easily compared to the more rural Ben Hill Road. Do you follow what I'm saying? Let me just take some of your questions. Did you guys see the map, or do I need to show you guys again? You can also just go to Google Maps and put in Ben Hill Road and Kingsport, or directions from Kingsport or Jonesboro, and then you can see, and I've provided a screen grab of the map in my previous video, the one about Don investigates himself. You can see that where the turnoff is just beyond, the turnoff to the funky shed is just beyond Ben Hill Road, right? And I've got to say, I misunderstood Don when he spoke to Chris McDonough. The way I understood it was that he turned into Ben Hill Road. I'm not saying he said that, I don't think he did, but the way I understood it was that he approached, over the storm, thanks a lot, that he approached the driveway and then just carried on it down that road to a shed that was just a little bit further down. That's how I understood it. I didn't really realize that he didn't actually even turn into Ben Hill Road, or that the funky shed is actually quite a long distance from Chalet Wells. Now, just take the statements again that Don has made. He said, somewhere would never wander off. Well, this is a far way to wander off, somewhere where you'd need to drive to that point. The other thing that I think is quite interesting is he didn't sort of drive and sort of see his boys. How did he know his boys were there? And, maybe if it's on Facebook Messenger, if you still got those messages, maybe he could share those with us. Maybe Candace said, Don, by the way, the kids are at the funky shed, right? So they're waiting for you there. Well, then that would make sense. But is that what happened? It just seems a little bit odd that he would go straight to this funky shed and then not even so he's going to the funky shed only to not go there. And I kind of made that point in the previous video, just saying, so he goes to the shed, only he doesn't go to the shed. He doesn't look in the shed. He doesn't know if he looks or doesn't look. And often in an emergency, you act with conviction. You look there, you call that person, there's urgency and conviction. And instead what he does is he acts with conviction, besides loading his tools up first, drives to home, only to not go home, then drives up to the funky shed, only not to go into the funky shed, and then drives where? To the creek. Does he say that he looks in the creek? Does he say, I looked in the creek for Summer? Does he says he calls out to her, but does he drives to the creek, I guess ostensibly to look for Summer, then does he look for her there, right? The other thing that I think is quite interesting is, and I'm just asking the question here, do you think Don wants us to look in the creek? Let me say that again. Do you think Don is directing us, that Don wants us to sort of look in and look in all the waterways. Do you think that is what he wants? May says, I think Summer's being held somewhere around the parents' property. It sounds like you think she could be alive. Joe Easter, the way he explained it in my mind was he drove to the shed, then saw the boys, no mention of driving further. Well, true, but in his demonstration, in his reenactment, he does drive further, and it's quite a lot further. And the other thing that I think is quite important is the fact that, as far as I know, it rained quite a lot the day before. So if you go to Candace's TikTok videos, it's actually a rare instance, I think, where Summer speaks, where you hear her just say a few words. But there's like thunder and stuff. The TikTok videos are basically just black with a few little flashes of light. And I think there was quite a big storm on June 14th. If that's true, then that area could have and should have been very muddy. And it's quite difficult to expect that you would drive a vehicle like that over rough terrain, and it's very muddy. I mean, you might actually struggle to get out of there. Right? I don't know if you could go on that terrain after a lot of rain. The other thing is you could also expect that that creek would have been perhaps in spate, that it could have been flowing really, really strongly. How relevant that is debatable. So I want to come back to something I've said before, which is, bear in mind, when someone is giving a version of events, they do want to be as honest as they can be. And often how they speak is symbolically. So if you say someone is gone, it can be true. It's true that they are gone, and they're also gone in terms of the idea you have that they're missing. And so you get away with saying something that is true and can be inferred in a certain way. If you take where Candace says Summer goes down to the basement, so if you take the psychology of Summer goes down, Summer goes into the house, into Chalet Wells. The boys don't really pay attention to her. She goes down the stairs into the basement, and then she possibly ends up going out the basement door at the bottom, never to be seen again. That's the scenario that's been presented. Now, just consider the following. Consider that as code language for the swimming hole. Summer goes into the house, Summer goes into the swimming hole. Summer goes down into the basement, Summer goes down under the water, right? Unseen. There are boys that are watching TV or watching the internet. Well, that's Macbeth who's watching TikTok or doing whatever. They're distracted. And then Summer's never seen again. Summer exits through the basement door, but we don't actually know what happened. Well, isn't that Summer drowns? Cat Sanctuary, thanks a lot. My May says you should lead the investigation, you would sort out the truth. I think there are very capable people out there. The difference is they may not go on YouTube and say what they know. That's the difference. And this is I'm with here. So anyway, I think that is certainly a psychological match potentially to what we're talking about here. And remember also what Candace's words. If you go back to Chris McDonough's video where Candace describes it, she's standing right next to she's standing right next to the water hole. She's pointing towards the water hole. She's quite activated. She's waving her arms. She's looking towards those branches and the water. But she's actually supposedly describing the events back at Chalet Wells. And she then finishes off saying, she was just gone. And I think that's true. She was just gone, right? So the scenario that I'm presenting here is that could someone have taken Summer and left her in the funky shed for the express purpose that another person can conveniently retrieve her and take her far away? Ladybug, she was gone and nowhere to be seen. Denise says, I feel drug-related. Failed drug test too. Chris McDonough said, I'm not sure if that's true. I know Candace apparently had substances. I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't be surprised though. Terry Schmeck, I'm confused. I thought Candace was in the truck. Truck has a back seat. The picture of Summer in the back seat is staged. Well, bear in mind that that picture was taken earlier on in the day, on the way back from the swimming hole. So what I'm suggesting is this may have happened a little bit later in the day. The period we don't know what happened, the period around about after 3:30 and before 5:30. Someone says, did Summer choke on the candy Grandma gave her? Well, that's a possibility, along with, did someone give Summer a sedative while they were, frolicking or whatever they were doing at the swimming hole? Did they need Summer to sort of be quiet or whatever? I think you've got to compare the possibility of that to the very common occurrence of drowning and the fact that Summer couldn't swim. I tend to lean towards the drowning, right? Sharon Tuck says, great feedback, everyone. Great questions. Keep them coming. Gina says, thank you for your hard work on Summer's case. I've watched every episode. Thanks, Gina. Sageti Norna, talking to cats out of the bag. Amanda O'Neill, skeletal remains were found, but it's not related. Joanne Bailey, that's why I mentioned the pool container. Okay, so my question is, okay, so KK Heaven says, thanks for that, says, does Don own the funky shed? Yes, he does. Something that surprised me in this footage from Voices Behind the Wall, which Don obviously gave to them to put up, was how big their property is. You know, it's not like just the hill. It's not just the hill where the chalet is. It's sort of quite a long distance beyond that. I think it even crosses the creek. It goes right up to the main road. So, you know, when Don's driving, he's like, well, you know, this is our property, and he's driving quite fast. I think it's 11 acres, but certainly quite a large property. So, you know, that's quite interesting. Someone's asking, what's your normal work background? I'm an investigative reporter, and also I've written over 100 books. I've written quite a few books on missing children and missing persons cases. I've also studied law and psychology and so on. So I guess that's my background. I've been in true crime for over a decade. So I hope that answers your question. Phoenix Max says, I don't get why that comment is not being talked about more. Yes, Don called it a funky shed. Those are Don's words. So I'm calling the shed at the bottom a funky shed based on what he said, and the shed at the top the forbidden shed or the forbidden shack, right? I actually watched the video that Chris McDonough did, and it's not really as though Candace says, no, you can't go there. He sort of says, can we have a look in there? And she just seems a little bit resistant. I think she sort of even says, well, kind of shrugging, you can go and look, but even the boys don't go in there. So she doesn't encourage him to look in there, but it's not as though the sirens come out and she's like, you may not go and look in there. But one does get one does get the sense that Chris McDonough was sort of going with the flow, and that Candace was having the flow not go that way, if one can put it that way. So that brings us to the second point, which is Don knowing to go to the shed. And I'm kind of saying that with inverted commas. I'm saying Don knows to go to the shed. Or why did he choose to go there? Now, he's given a version of events, and it could be that Candace kind of explained to him, we have looked everywhere. And so Don thought quite logically, well, there's no point in actually going to Ben Hill Road, even though I'm driving there. Let me go somewhere else. Let me look somewhere else. And that kind of makes sense. It doesn't make sense from the point of view of that Summer never wandered off and that Summer would never leave their property and all that kind of thing. But it does sort of make sense from the perspective of Candace saying, you know what, we've done a grid search and this part is excluded. You go and have a look at that part, right? But I think there's another way of interpreting that, which is, did Don know to go to that shed? Did Don arrange something to be picked up at that shed? Did Candace and Don make some kind of, was something discussed that it was like, well, to the shed? Because the odd thing is, Don goes to the shed only not to go to the shed. Don goes to the shed only not to look inside it. So why does he go there? Why does he go there only not to do anything, kind of thing? Yeah, the interesting thing, and I've tried to stress it in the previous video, is even in his reenactment, he doesn't really look in the shed. So he takes us to the shed only to not look in it, even in terms of his reenactment. What I mean is he drives up, as he drives up, the camera actually kind of looks away, looks past the shed, and then as he passes the shed, it goes to the left, the shed's on the left as he approaches, and then he says, well, there's Chalet Wells, kind of thing. And then he drives further up kind of a bumpy road and then down very close to this creek, right? Now, it does feel like that vehicle could easily have gotten stuck if it is really muddy there. But irrespective of that, even when he drives back, he's very dismissive of the funky shed. It's like, you know what, there's some junk here, there's just junk here, whatever, and it's like nothing to see here, let's move on. And what is interesting is he drives in, kind of turns around, drives back, stops, gets out, and just basically goes in and out within 15 seconds and then drives back on the road. One wonders if something like that didn't happen, whether he drove in there, turned around, walked into the shed quickly, got something, got back in the car and drove off. One wonders whether something like that could have happened. The other thing that I think is worth noting, just from the perspective of the layout, and this is why I really suggest you do look at Google Maps. Let me put the map back on screen. I'm just going to bring it up a little bit so you can see. So I'll put my cursor where the funky shed is, and it's just above where it says Beach Creek. Let me just turn it on there so I can show you. Okay, so there is the funky shed. There is Chalet Wells. That's the route from Jonesboro. And so look how far you've got to drive beyond the turnoff to Ben Hill Road, right, to get there. There's the road you would take in there and then turn around. I suppose one could come out there as well, and then go back out there. But the part that I want to kind of emphasize here is, do you notice how the entrance to the entrance by car to Chalet Wells, right? This entrance where the police may have gone, that entrance is at the back on the far side of the shack, of that shed. Do you see that? You wouldn't actually be able to see that shed if you were on this side because there's a hill in the way. Do you see that? And there's the power line area that has been cleared. So I hope that's made it kind of obvious. Could you guys see that? I can't really see the camera when I've kind of got the camera turned away. Could you guys actually see that? Let's just have a look. Lisa Hunt is there on Amazon. Okay. SM Kovalinsky, good to see you here. Always enjoy your comments. Yes, we could see. Okay, good to hear that. So I've already commented on how I find it quite interesting how when you approach Chalet Wells, the front door is facing away from your approach. So if you drive up, your front door area is sort of facing away. So if someone's in there that doesn't want to be seen by someone approaching, such as law enforcement, if someone is there that shouldn't be there, they can exit without being seen, if someone is coming from the bottom. And in relation to that, I also think it's interesting that this shed is situated at the bottom on that side, also away from the way you would approach the property. I just find it quite interesting. The other thing that's quite interesting with the funky shed is the door to the funky shed also faces away from the main road. I also thought it was interesting that the door was open when you approached the shed, whereas the door to the forbidden shed was closed. In Don's video, I think it was somewhat open, seemed to be ajar when Chris McDonough went there. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Let's look at some of your comments. I really enjoy your work and you help me think deeper and challenge my mind. Thanks so much. Thanks, Barbie. Joyce Johns, I'm sure someone bought snacks for the dogs to keep them quiet. I don't know if you noticed when Don arrived home in his footage, you saw quite a few dogs right there. And they didn't respond to him being there, but they do seem to respond to strangers being there. I'm just trying to see what else I said about Don. So I was just saying that he seemed to know to go to the shed. Was he possibly trying to avoid the cops? Because there's a big question, were the police there when he got there? And he's said that they were and they weren't. I think he first said that they weren't there, almost in a disparaging way that, wow, I got there before the police. So what were the police doing? But then later on, I think he said there may have been one or two cops there. I don't know if you guys caught that. But you've also got to wonder, if the police were there, why is he somewhere else? They are there to investigate. They're the best people to investigate. Why not go to them and give them information, give them a photo of Summer, share his fear that, if he knows for certain, the second he got there, she was abducted, well, go to the police immediately and tell them, kind of thing. And that brings us to the third aspect that I want to deal with here, which is the red truck. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks a lot. The red truck. Wasn't the red truck there that morning or the night before? Now, I don't know if you remember in the early alerts, the early announcements about the red truck. Do you remember they didn't say that the red truck was seen there on the 15th? It was sort of on the 14th or the 15th. Do you guys remember that? Do you remember when law enforcement sort of announced the red truck for the first time, that we're looking for the driver? They sort of said, the red truck was seen there between the 14th and the 15th. Do you remember? Contessa, I'm about to get to that. So I do find it really interesting that a red truck, I don't know if it's the red truck, but certainly a red truck was apparently seen there that morning, possibly also the night before. But the question is, where? Was it by the funky shed? Again, I kind of assumed that to mean that it was kind of by the driveway, that it was sort of at the bottom of his driveway. So, I'm not quite sure where exactly that red truck was, but I think the other interesting thing is that the police were there. Why were the police there? Don was actually helping the folks in the red truck. And so I do think it raises the possibility of either an accessory or that there's some kind of relay, right? In the Madeleine McCann case, some people have a hypothesis that Madeleine died and then she was moved behind the couch, from behind the couch in apartment 5A to the parents' bedroom inside a cupboard, and then from there taken outside somewhere else, and then possibly from there into a vehicle, and then from there somewhere else. So moved from one place to another. I'm just saying it's a theory. In the Gannon store case, you actually have the same thing happening. Gannon moved, first I think is in a particular vehicle parked in airport parking for a short while. Then he is taken somewhere to the side of a road, north, I think, of Colorado Springs. And then from there, driven like 1,500 miles or 1,000 miles to Florida, and then left beside a highway there. So you have this relay. Whenever you have a relay scenario, it's very, very difficult to find someone, because the size of the grid that you're searching just gets huge. It almost spreads out into infinity, right? And so the question is, isn't that what has happened here? That there's been some kind of relay where someone first went there, then there, and that is why we're at day 60 and we still can't find Summer, because there's a relay involved. And so the question is the red truck not part of that? And if it is, isn't that why they haven't come forward? Or is there something else that the red truck driver is worried about, something else that they are involved in, that they, maybe they're not involved in what happened to Summer, but they're involved in something else, and so they don't want to, help with the investigation. And that brings me to kind of a fourth point, which I don't know whether, let's do a quick poll. How many of you believe an accident happened at the swimming hole? Let's just do a quick poll. 1 yes, 2 no. So how many of you believe an accident happened at the swimming hole, and the last photo basically shows that? Quite it's quite split in a way. Quite a few seem to not believe that. Okay, so for those of you who believe there was an accident, and I guess for those of you who believe there wasn't an accident, I think the question is, people say, why would you cover up an accident? It would be totally unnecessary. That is a fantastic question. What's the answer? I believe there was an accident in the John Benet Ramsey case. I believe there was an accident in the Madeleine McCann case. But I think you've got to answer that question, why would you cover up an accident? Is there a good reason to cover up an accident? Now, I think two excellent examples of accidents that aren't very accidental are celebrity drownings that are maybe not even drownings, but nevertheless where celebrities drowned in their bathtubs. And then you've got to ask, well, was that an accident? So, if you said someone died in their bathroom and it was an accident, you can almost imagine they got in the bath and slipped and it just fell and knocked their head in a freak accident. That would be like a really random freak accident, right? Something that you couldn't really predict, although, be careful when you get into the bath. But if you take Whitney Houston, she was found submerged in her bathtub, and she'd obviously taken a lot of substances. So that was an accidental drowning, but was it really so accidental? In the Dolores O'Riordan inquest, Dolores sang for the Cranberries. She was also found in her bathtub, and she consumed a huge amount of alcohol. So, but it was ruled an accidental death. Do you think it's an accident if you drink a heck of a lot of alcohol and then you get in the bath? I'm just saying it's totally different, an accident, and when you take certain risks around that, then it's kind of an accident waiting to happen. It's totally different, right? And so for starters, I'm trying to suggest that the accident at the swimming hole wasn't so accidental. If you take a child that can't swim to a swimming hole, then an accident can happen, right? And it's not so accidental. The other side to it is, why would someone want to cover it up? I'm not going to deal with that answer here, but that is a very important question. And I think I don't think it's rocket science to know what the answer is to that. Okay, so let me take some of your questions. Laurie Rushing, hello, Timmy. Timmy, someone say hello. Let me just show you Timmy so you can get... Timmy's all hairy because it's the middle of winter. Well, winter's about to wear off. So I will be shaving him at some point. Not a water accident, no, okay. She might have went up to the rocks to play with H. The other thing is it does look like there could be a slight bruising to the one side of Summer's forehead. And so it could be Summer jumping into the water and bumping her head and then, being underwater for a period of time. That could have been a factor as well. So you could have a situation of she wandered off where the drop-off was and something went wrong, or she didn't wander off and she was swimming in shallow water and she banged her head against a rock and there were rocks there. There was also, submerged trees all over the place. And the last footage we have of her swimming, video footage, she is jumping around. She is jumping almost face first into the water. And that is how an accident can happen. I tend to think it wasn't rock because I would imagine that if she did bump her head against rock, the skin would be torn. The bruise would be clearer. I tend to think it would be a hard surface, but with a softish exterior, that it wouldn't break them. That's just my opinion. Someone says, I think heat exhaustion in the car. Possible. I just don't think that was a very hot day. And also, she's dressed warmly because apparently it was cold. So I don't know. Anna says the tree. KK Heflin, someone will crack, too many people involved. Well, one thing we've seen with this particular family is, like with the disappearance of Rosemary, it's possible that someone is capable of keeping secrets for a very long time. Bear in mind also people who abuse or people who use drugs a lot are used to keeping secrets. Whispers says, let's give him a thumbs up for his excellent content. Thanks a lot. Laura, it's good to see you here. My question is about Macbeth's statement about what happened at the swimming hole, especially about her condition in the vehicle before he was dropped off. So I'm not surprised that Macbeth gives himself a clean bill of health. So Macbeth basically says everything was fine, everything was kosher when I sort of step out of the story. Summer was fine. He notices everything about Summer. He describes himself as very vigilant and alert, except was he? Because that if he wasn't vigilant and alert, well, that's how something can happen. And then he doesn't notice Summer when he gets out the vehicle. He doesn't say goodbye to his friend, who he is supposedly went with, because according to Alison, they're friends, and so that's why they went swimming. But then he doesn't notice her when he gets out the vehicle, doesn't notice, not quite sure how the milk moved, and this and that and the next thing. Call it intuition, but I do tend to believe Alison when she says she was suspicious when, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but she said, when she saw Summer and Summer didn't get out the vehicle, and Summer seemed to be sleeping, but Summer would normally get out and run to her. That I think she said she was concerned. I believe that. I believe that version is true, and it holds hands with the video footage. So let me just go through some more of your comments here. Royal Blue, addicts are the best liars. That's true. Do you guys agree that there's been a lot of lying in this case already? A lot of lying. Tarot says Grandma got pills and gave Summer candy. It looks like Summer has pink drool stain. Did Summer find pills and think candy? It's possible. It's possible that Summer did mistake pills for candy. It is possible. I think you've also got to ask, what's more possible? A child doing that, or a child drowned and couldn't swim at a swimming hole? And there's also the possibility that it could be, to some extent, a combination, that the substances involved, substances relevant to the swimming hole events, and someone who can't swim, right? Yvonne von Eschen, thanks Yvonne. Kim Holmes, do we know whether the boys have said they've seen Summer go to the basement? I don't think we know anything about what the boys have said, but I do think law enforcement do know. I do think law enforcement have asked. I think the boys will have been able to talk about ordinary things that seem ordinary to them, such as where Summer usually slept and could Summer swim, ordinary things like that. I think the boys could have provided intel on, kind of thing. And I think the fact that the boys are separated is also quite interesting. Timmy needs a bang. What's that? Oh, a bang trim. Okay. Eva, love your channel and fascinating commentary. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take a couple of your questions for another minute. Then I'm going to take you through the evolution of thinking, how thinking needs to evolve, how it does evolve, and also how this channel, True Crime Rocket Science, how you need to evolve as a someone who's interested in true crime, someone who's looking into a true crime case like this one. Your thinking needs to evolve. I think Einstein said you can't approach problems with the same thinking as when that problem originated. Your thinking has got to improve. It's got to develop. It's got to become more advanced. It's got to become better. I think if you take the pandemic, the way we understood the pandemic around the beginning and the way we understand it now, from just being fearful and not knowing, is this the end of the world? Is this horrible? Is this nothing? We now have a better sense because of our experience a year later. It's important that our thinking improves. Deborah van Kurverden, not quite sure how to say your name. Are you from the Netherlands? Emotion Clouds Critical Thinking. Christine says, I'm mailing you this weekend. Sounds good. Eternal Flame, why carry extra clothes of Summer? She was potty trained. Was Summer even there that day? Okay. So if you guys, if there are people here that were only here for Summer Wells, now's your chance to let yourselves out the back door and you can head on somewhere else. I'm going to be talking about our brains and how we need to think about certain things. So if you're not interested in that, you can head off. I don't want to disappoint you. Why we're not talking about Summer Wells? We might talk a little bit more about Summer Wells, but I want to talk about Summer Wells and how we approach thinking about true crime from the perspective of how our thinking needs to evolve, right? I'm going to go into that in a moment. My little dog makes dream noises. Mine does too. Someone says, please cover the comments Don made on the live with a couple a few days ago about having to be resurrected. That is, Don has been speaking about resurrection, which I think is significant to be talking that way. You also had both the Ramseys and the McCanns turning to God and praying as if they knew someone had recently died. You don't normally summon sort of religious intervention when your child might have wandered off. Bear in mind with the Ramseys, the pastor summoned there even before John Bonet was found. You don't tend to summon your pastor unless you know what is going on. So it is also quite interesting. Please see Loris Warenko's super chat question. Thanks, Lauren Noel Hall. Let's see if I can find Loris's. I have responded to it. I believe Alison's account of what Summer looked like in that last photo. And I think it holds hands with the last photo. Okay, so I'm going to refer to this article in New Scientist. New Scientist is a really excellent magazine, right? So this article, it's a title article, The 7 Ages of You. I just want to, before I get to that article, I want to show you, it's in New Scientist that they actually advertise for a director of forensic services. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, just hold it like this. And that's in Scotland, right? And so it's in a magazine about science that they're advertising for this critical role from the Scottish Police Authority. And so they're looking for a professional, blah, blah, blah. But the point is that they want someone who's scientifically minded. That's who they want at the top part of. I just found it interesting that I'm reading this magazine and they're advertising for some of the most important people in criminal investigation in Scotland in this magazine. I just thought it was interesting. So I want to take you through how the brain and thinking needs to evolve as we change, and apply that to true crime rocket science. So it starts with, there's an article by David Robson. It starts with original thinking, right? And even on YouTube, there are a couple of creators that have an original thought, but I would say most don't. When people are stealing your material, and I actually saw someone took my most popular video on Summer Wells and took the whole thing, put the whole video wholesale into their live, right? And then thought that was fine. That's my content. By the way, if anybody comes across my content on another channel, I haven't given them permission. If I use any content, I make sure you guys know about it. I put a link in the description and I credit them in the actual video. But taking your entire video, from including the end credits, the opening music, all of that, everything, putting the entire video inside their video. And I think, again, what that shows is just lack of their own original thinking, right? But that is what happens when you're a baby. When you're very, very small, your original thing is kind of at a maximum, right? And that is quite important in true crime as well. You might say that original thinking is a baby step, but without it, you're not going to get anywhere. It's almost like saying, if you're Vincent van Gogh or one of the great artists, if you aren't capable of being creative, then everything that follows that, you might as well just stop. A creative person that's not creative, it doesn't work, right? So original thinking starts when you're a child, but you can lose that. You can lose that gift that is innate, which is original thinking, where you think for yourself. You don't take someone else's thoughts. You look into this crime and you have an original thought about it, right? I'm not saying you should ignore all the other thoughts that are there. I'm not saying someone else has a thought, I'm not going to think about that, although I do tend to work like that. I try not to pay too much attention to what I'll pay attention to investigators and the police, but I don't want to know too much what other creators are saying, because I want to know what my opinion is. I'm not always that interested in other opinions. I'm not saying I'm not curious, just that I don't want to be my opinion to be contaminated, because it helps me to be original by not knowing what someone else is saying. Now, this is a quote I want to read from this article. Much of the childhood brain development arises from a form of statistical learning that resembles the scientific method, making predictions about the world and updating them according to evidence gained through experience. That's absolutely incredible to think that, all of us, when you're a baby, well, I just missed that. Let me just come out of this. I'm good, says, as a registered nurse and lover of science, I love this topic. Thanks a lot for that. Thank you. I must have seen your comments quite a few times. I really appreciate you standing up for me and what you've said. So it's really amazing how a baby just has this sort of computer running in its mind, how it is using actually the scientific method. The scientific method is making predictions about the world according to evidence. So you've got information which you use to make a prediction. If it fails, if it's incorrect, then that method's got to be slightly changed. And we make the same predictions about true crime. Based on the information we've got, we make a prediction. That's what this particular episode's been about. It is, we found a little bit more information about the shed at the bottom. We found a little bit more information about certain words that were used. And we're trying to make predictions based on what we know. And if we're wrong, we've got to go back and change our thinking slightly, right? That is the scientific method. We update what we know, and we search for evidence, and we get some of it through experience, some of it through research, some of it through aggregating it. But isn't that wonderful that is how babies learn, is through the scientific method? Think about how they learn how to talk. They realize, well, that word means that one doesn't. It's either factually or it's literally the right word, right? This is like a teddy bear or boy or a dog's toy, or it isn't. It's not a glass of water. Right? That is not a glass of water. Well, that is not a glass of water. and so baby will learn, okay, well, that is that and that's not that. And that's how they pick up language. But the amazing thing with babies are how much they learning at a fantastic rate that we never ever learn. We never have that ability to pick up, to absorb things like a sponge that we do as a baby. And when you're a baby, not only do you have original thinking, but you're not afraid to make mistakes in your thinking. I think this is that. No, it's not that. Oh, is it that? No, it's not that. Is it that? Yes. And so you're not afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn. That's also how you learn really, really quickly. The other thing that I want to highlight here is to gather information, a baby's attention will drift to anything that is unexpected or surprising. That also must apply in true crime. So, like in this case, the funky shed is quite unexpected and surprising. Don driving past the entry to Beniel Road is a bit surprising. Macbeth is quite surprising. Even Candace is surprising. What is surprising about it? Well, that's where we must drift in our early encounters with these people. But then we've got to evolve from that point, from being surprised and letting our minds drift to something more concrete, right? We do need to be intensely curious. We've got to pay attention to these things. We've got to hang on to every word. And then it also refers to, we see trivial details, but we're fascinated by them. And we try and work out what different words mean. In the same way, babies try and work out, what does that word mean? What's the difference between water and watered down? Well, watered down is diluted, right? A baby's also got to work out what semantics are. In true crime, there's a particular vernacular, right, that is slightly different. And that is quite interesting with intertextuality. You hear the same statements repeated in different cases, which tends to alert you that something's wrong. Babies play a lot. They spend a lot of time playing and pretending. And what that is like is putting yourself in role play shoes. You sort of role play a certain thing in order to learn what's appropriate and how things happen, right? And we need to do that more in true crime as well. Like, imagine if I was in that situation, would I do that? If I was at the swimming hole, would I do that? Playing pretend trains the capacity to come up with complex hypothetical scenarios. Let me say that again. Playing pretend, role-playing, improves our capacity to understand complex hypothetical scenarios, right? Putting ourselves in the shoes of the suspect or the perpetrator. David Robson also writes that children spend a huge amount of time in imaginary worlds, honing skills compared to adults. So at this level, when you first have a brush with a crime, you want to spend a lot of time imagining scenarios. You want to spend a lot of time thinking about possibilities, imagining things. I know in the beginning, one of the first thoughts that a lot of people had was dry drowning. Another one was trafficking. Another one was opiate use. Another one was that she got lost in the woods. Another one was that a bear could have taken her. All of those scenarios are important to imagine, but after you've imagined them, you need to reach a higher level of thinking. So for those who, I don't know if some of you have just joined, we're talking about the evolution of the true crime rocket scientist, the evolution of our thinking, and how we need to improve our thinking in terms of the Summer Wells case. I'm quoting from the New Scientist. A child grasps more words and a growing ability to tell stories, and that affects their ability to remember their life. Now, just think about that. How important it is as a child to grasp as many words as you can, to build up your vocabulary as extensively as you can in order to tell stories effectively. And that is just so wow for me as a storyteller, as a writer. It is important to have excellent diction, a very good lexicon, the ability to draw on words and memes and statements and phrases and idioms and ordinary language tools in order to tell your story as effectively as you can, to tell it in a way that's going to be visceral and moving and it's going to resonate, but also that it's going to be authentic. And the more words you've got to draw on, the better your story is going to be. That also applies to prosecutors and defense lawyers. It also applies to suspects. If you can tell a convincing story that's not true, but you're quite a good storyteller, well, who knows? Look at Amanda Knox. She wrote a book about what happened to her, and look how well she's doing. Is that because of good storytelling, or because she had a good story to tell? Or is it a bit of both? Something else here. It's just so ironic that we can't remember when we were babies. We can't remember because we don't have the words to remember those memories, right? He concludes, David Robson concludes, our autobiographical memory seems to grow with our language skills, which may explain why our recollections of the first few years are hazy at best. Incredible. So as our ability to use language improves, our memories of our own lives also improves. Our autobiographical sense of ourselves also improves. The next level of thinking is basically adolescence, which is where you take risks, where it talks about the prefrontal cortex matures quickly, and behavioral inhibition and logical thought are sort of brought in. And the adolescent phase is thought to be where you're incapable of actually making good decisions, that you're actually hardwired to make bad decisions. And the interesting thing is, the important thing about being an adolescent is that you're trying to create relationships. You're taking risks in order to make relationships, and isn't that more important than the risk taking at that point in the life? So in terms of the adolescent phase of true crime, you want to start building relationships to find the dynamics between the people in the case. You're trying to find what are the family dynamics. You're trying to find what are the this is a risky period because you don't know the answer. You don't know whether the direction you're going into is right, and you also don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes. You're trying to examine something that is very sort of recondite. It's very, even if you had to introduce yourself to a good friend and ask them to explain your family dynamics, there would be a lot that they just wouldn't know, right? The teenage period is about spontaneity and exploring and trying things out. Well, that's the same with true crime. You want to try out new ideas. You want to be tolerant of ambiguity. So when people say, could trafficking be an issue? Could this or that? You've got to hold an idea that doesn't actually sit well with you and tolerate it. You've got to allow it to play out, right? You want to see how your suspects fit into the world or don't fit in socially. You want to see whether there's social death involved in the whole thing as well. Robbie Robin, you're late, but it's good to have you here. And so from the original thinking, you go up a level, which is where you take risks in your thinking, and you try and figure out the more difficult and complex thing, which is the relationship between people in this new kind of true crime dynamic, the new true crime universe, which is like another case. Then you go from that to another level, which is equivalent to your 20s, And this is where your ability just speeds up. You're faster in your processing. You quite effective. But what's quite interesting in the article is it talks about are you happy? You know, people remember their 20s as the happiest time of their lives, but usually isn't. It's usually stressful. But with a good true crime rocket scientist, you do want to make your thinking faster and faster. You want to thin slice and get to the, you know, I honestly don't believe in the Summer Wells case that the police consider everyone a suspect. I think they're far further down that road because 60 days later, you know, their thinking should have gone somewhere after the first, second, third, fourth day, especially the first 2 weeks. Their thinking should have gone somewhere. In a weird way, your 20s are your physical prime. In a way, to some extent, your mental prime, but in the sense that your eyesight is very good and you can maybe process very quickly and effectively, but your thinking is not necessarily right. You might not be seeing things and you may still not know how to put things together. So in other words, you may see things quickly, process things quickly, register things quickly, but not actually know how to interpret them, not actually have insight from that. And that brings us then to your 30s. In terms of the evolution of your brain. When you reach the 30s, you are starting to develop endurance in terms of your thinking. You're able to stay with a problem longer. And on my Instagram, I talk about, it's not that I'm so smart, it's a quote from Einstein, it's not that I'm so smart, but I stay with problems longer, right? And that can't be overemphasized. The difference between an Olympian and any success and a failure is the guy who got up one more time compared to the other guy. In true crime as well, you know, the John Benet Ramsey case, the Madeleine McCann case, so many of these cases, you need endurance to see your way to the end, to know actually what happened. And one thing I've noticed that I've certainly been an encouragement to me is I've got longer attention spans than most people. You know, I've written multiple books. Writing a book requires incredible focus. Writing a book requires discipline. Writing a book requires concentration, endurance, and a lot of people simply don't have that. And that, I guess, was a gift that I've been given. I know as a little boy, I swam a lot, up and down, 6 days a week. Where you swim for an hour and all you've got to look at under you are the tiles of the swimming pool. So in a weird way, it's really boring. There's the mind rot of long distance swimming, but it taught endurance to a little boy. And I think that has really helped me to write books and to have staying power in true crime. You know, I think the only channel I know of that is counting down the days of someone's disappearance. We're at 60 days. How many more days is it going to take? I don't anticipate it's going to be a lot more. I don't think this is going to last as long as the Barry Morphew case. But one's got to have endurance to see things through. I wonder whether there was enough endurance in the disappearance of Rosemary. Should there have been more of an effort in that case? In terms of your 30s, in terms of when you go to that level, your brain's cognitive ability starts to hit its stride. That is different to processing speed. It's what you actually do with what you know, right? In this article in the New Scientist, it refers to the capacity to hold multiple pieces of information in mind at once. That peaks in our early 30s. That's kind of a reference to intertextuality, right? The ability to hold multiple pieces of information or multiple patterns in your brain, right? Meaning you can think about how this case has that snippet in it, and it corresponds to that case, and that case was slightly different to that case. And now what you're doing is actually thinking laterally. You're not caught in the passage or the channel of one case. You're able to jump out of the channel of one case, get something out of the cave, get some treasure, some insight out of the cave of another, and bring it back into the case you're using. That is going to give you more certainty, more confidence in what you're talking about. So it also refers to mental processing now starts to slow down in your 30s, but you're gaining because your cognitive ability is improving. So you might be a little bit slower in absorbing information, but your brain makes up for that in your ability to sort of thin slice and to have insight. So you don't need to remember things so quickly. Okay, and then that brings us to 40s. Some people think that that's the beginning of the end, and that's when you're going to, everything's downhill from there. Interestingly, Robson writes that midlife is a period of high stress. But I think the 20s and 30s are a frustrating and stressful time. As your thinking evolves up to this level, it is actually frustrating and stressful. You go up a lot of dead ends, a lot of your theories don't pan out. You're still not quite there, right, in terms of this. What is really amazing about this is in your 40s, your ability to intuit what, the meanings of micro expressions. This applies to everybody. Peaks in your 40s, your ability to register from facial expressions, social nuance, peaks in your 40s. So in other words, your ability to be emotionally intelligent, in other words, picking up nonverbal cues, peaks in your 40s. And I'm in my 40s now. I'm almost moving out of my 40s. But I must say, I think I've definitely developed in that area, especially in the last couple of years, where you pay attention to and you notice those tiny little expressions. And it's quite an amazing thing when you pick them up and someone else just doesn't see them. And it's a skill, but it's also something that comes with the territory of being in your 40s. That it's a nuance that you are wired to pick up. So I don't know if some of you in your 40s have also noticed that you are better at not listening even to what people are saying, but reading between their own lines, reading what is going on through what you're seeing. I don't know if you guys have picked that up. It also refers to the 40s as a really powerful time for us to sustain our attention. We can sustain our attention better than someone in their 30s and 20s and so on. I've heard that part of why Ironman athletes, Ironman is something that I got into and quite interested in, is because they can sustain their efforts better, the endurance is better, not just because of the physical body, but because of the mental machine that is running the show, is much better at sustained effort, the mental machine, running the show, than if you're in your 30s or something. It's really quite extraordinary that just the change in thinking makes you a better athlete. And so sustained effort also helps us become better true crime rocket scientists. It's not erratic. It's not sort of, a little bit here and there. It's a sustained effort. There's a quote from his article. He says, "It is interesting to note that middle-aged people frequently bring in the most supplies in traditional hunter-gatherer societies." I love that quote just because it takes us right out of our lives here and basically says, you know what? Folks in their 40s in the hunter-gatherer time kicked ass. They kind of brought it for their whole communities. And so I think people in their 40s are extremely productive. I think you can make the argument that, I don't know, some of you are older than that. When did you make the most money you ever made in your life? Was it your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, 50s, when? When are you the most productive in your capacity as a person to earn a living, you know? So I think, I don't know, I could be wrong, and obviously I would say this, but aren't some of the best true crime rocket scientists in their 40s? You are old enough to have quite a lot of experience, but you're young enough still to have strong capacity. You know, I don't wear glasses, but I think I'm going to need to get some quite soon. But I just mean that your abilities are kind of at a peak, more your cognitive abilities than your physical abilities. And you've learned a lot about social nuance. But that's not to deride the thinking that comes after this. So the level of thinking, and I'm not saying me as a 40-something true crime rocket scientist, you know, I'm not able to crystallize my intelligence. I mean, all of us need to do that, just that it's going to get better with age, right? We need to go on this journey, all of us, in our thinking through every case. It doesn't mean you've got to wait until you're in your 50s to think in a crystal clear way. A really amazing quote, as I say, this is from New Scientist, really amazing quote, is he says, quote, contrary to popular opinion, human beings seem to have evolved to flourish into middle age and beyond. I mean, isn't that a nice thought, that we are actually we are evolved to be at our happiest and thrive and flourish in a genuine way into middle age and beyond. It's supposed to actually be the best time of our lives. If we're too busy pining after the past, too busy waving goodbye to our youth, you don't realize what has brought you to where you are, and then take that and make the most of it. So the 50s and 60s, that's the next level, as to do with crystallizing your intelligence. This is where you've got to be very careful you don't squander what's gotten you to where you are. So in other words, don't lose your fitness. That's certainly something I'm starting to worry about, is, you know, I'm not as physically active as I used to be, as I want to be. And that can start having an impact on other things, your sleep, health, your mental health overall. I'm not talking about your ability to fathom a crime, but certainly if your sleep is affecting your mental health, which is affecting your ability to function, that's not going to be good. So, you know, your brain may be doing really well, but some of the other systems underlying that might falter if you're not careful. But if you are careful, then what lies before you is potentially crystallized intelligence. It basically refers to that you have greater expressive power than people in their 20s, 30s, perhaps even 40s. Thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot. Because of this amount of knowledge you've now accumulated, right? And I must say, I've always thought that the best writers in the world, thanks a lot, Versi, the best writers in the world are somewhat elderly. That's just always the sense I got. And I know when I was writing books myself, just thinking, maybe I need to wait until I know more thing. And I was thinking about that today, just that maybe, you know, I've written 101 books, maybe I should wait a couple of years intentionally, even though there are 1 or 2 or 3 books I do want to finish, books I've started, other books I want to write. Maybe I should wait a while and then, you know, come back as a little bit of an older writer and then write again, kind of. But anyway, the point is that the older people in their 50s and 60s, they've got a very crystallized intelligence. They're able to tell stories in a much better way. The social, what do you call it? The social connectivity is at a really strong point. They've been around the block and they really know kind of how to, you know, press people's buttons, but also in a good way, right? And let me just refer to what he says here. He says, with our brains, as well as our bodies, it's a case of use it or lose it. So the interesting thing is, in your 50s or 60s, you've got this crystallized intelligence, but if you don't use it, if you're not reading, if you're not sharpening the saw, you are going to lose it. And what's going to help lose it is if you're not getting exercise, if you're not keeping the underlying conveyors going, well, then what's built on that's not going to do very well. It's kind of like a photocopying machine that's not plugged in properly, or that you're not maintaining the ink. It's going to start, getting a little bit dodgy. Finally catching alive. Mamashi, I hope you're not going to be disappointed with what you are catching, because we approaching the end of this live. Sharon Tucker, it's good to still see you. JC, Gina, you still here? I know you wanted to leave early. Harley Ann, is Nick Dutch? Cool, so I have a Van last name. Oh, really? Okay. What's your Van last name? Crystallina Bacteria. Nikki UK says, I'm in my 50s. I let a lot go over my head, and I'm a lot more patient. Christina Logan, great advice. King Donkey, just got here, love the title. Thanks for that. Patience is a virtue. So true, Nick. Brain is like a muscle, needs to be exercised. Absolutely. A great way to exercise the brain is by reading. You learn some words from another author that you might never have heard. It's like reading someone else's mind when you read a book. So Jean is still here. You make it hard to leave. I know you said you need to leave at around 2 hours. So I'm going to try and keep it within that. But if you've got to go, it's fine. Loretta Houch, I just turned 53, feel fantastic, work hard, single mom, just truly grateful for all I've been through. Blessings to all. KK Heflin, fascinating. Thanks so much. Netherlands. Oh, okay. I went to the Netherlands in 2019. Can't wait to go back, hopefully with a better bicycle. Ruby Tuesday, always love your analysis, Nick. I'm curious how you changed your theory. Just that I think the funky shed is part of the story, and you'll have to listen to the first part of the live. I'm not going to go through all of it again. Nonna, thanks a lot. I'm still going to get to the 70 plus aspect. So that's even further, right? So where your thinking ultimately needs to culminate is the 70 plus level in terms of this article. And how that happens is you've got to challenge yourself. So I'll give an example. I've written more than a dozen books on the John Benet Ramsey case. And I've written about half a dozen books on Madeleine McCann. And there's certain areas that you may feel, I'm not really sure about that in true crime. Well, you've got to challenge yourself. You've got to say, well, maybe I can find that out. Another thing is, because I'm a very visual person, I come from a family of artists. I like to look at crime scene photos. I like to, if I'm blogging about it or making a video, I like to actually show the actual footage, the actual picture, the best picture that I can find. And that is sometimes challenging. There's a stupid example, but in the video I just made now on Don investigating Don, there was an intertextual element that I wanted to quickly mention where I said Chris Watts also investigated his own crime scene. I don't know if you remember, he let the policeman in, Officer Coonrod, but then he walked in front of him through the house and was kind of like investigating his own crime scene before anyone else. He actually also went inside his home before anybody else, right? And but I wanted to actually show photos from there. And the photo I actually wanted to find, in the end I ran out of time, was where I'd taken a photo, a screenshot showing an arrow pointing to the suitcase at the bottom of the stairs. And what is happening is I'm challenging myself to find that information. And every time you challenge yourself to find information like that, not saying it's easy, not saying it's quick, but you come across so much other information on your way to that it refreshes you, right? So, challenge yourself to find hard to find information, and that's going to help you find a lot of information along the way, which is going to be useful. As a narrator, I can certainly appreciate that. And maybe it's not your job to do that. Maybe it's my job as a narrator to do that. But in other areas of your life, maybe you're raising children, maybe in your work, challenge yourself in certain areas that are difficult. And if you accept the challenge, if you go with it, it can actually, you go down those pathways more and more and more, it eventually leaves a path. And then it becomes easier to navigate to where you want to go. Happy birthday, Joe Mama. I'm about to finish up. There's another quote from this article in the New Scientist. In terms of intellectual humility, such a great point. That's why I say you don't need to be 70 years old to reach this point. You can reach this point in any true crime case, including the Summer Wells case. You must also, at the end of all of this expertise, at the end of all of this gathering information, maintain your intellectual humility. You could be wrong about something. Maybe you were on fire about that and the next thing. But what if you're wrong about this? What if you're wrong about that? And only maintaining your humility is going to take you back to the infant stage where you have an original thought and you can absorb more information. A cup is hard to fill that's already full. That's from Avatar. But if you don't have that intellectual humility, then you're not going to learn anything. So at the very end of this process is humility. And that is going to help you get over yourself, get over all the things you do know, is this openness to learning something new and to renewal. A quote from you is, intellectual humility is described as the capacity to admit what we don't know. The capacity to admit what we don't know. S.M. Kovalinsky, thanks a lot. About your prior remarks, YouTube content is intellectual property requiring explicit creator permission to use. YouTube takes the breach seriously. I did report, and this particular guy did remove it. But I was pretty shocked that he was so brazen about it. Anyway. Final points on this. The quality of our decision-making increases steadily throughout life. That's certainly a nice thing to know, is that, the quality of our decisions when we teenagers fortunately improves. It's still improving through our 20s, 30s, 40s, even in our 40s when we are pretty on top of our game. It can still improve as long as you're keeping the underlying things fit and healthy, as long as you are open to receiving new information. The quality of your decision-making can actually improve. I think we all know older people who start making really terrible decisions that are quite gullible. I think that happens when you start to either rest on your laurels or you start to just live in a corner of your own existence. But to the extent that you can, one thing that's really amazing, I think, is think about the fear of just ordinary things you had as a very young teenager, like when you were 13 years old, 14 years old, perhaps your fear of the opposite sex, perhaps your fear of doing something for the first time. I even was pretty reluctant to go onto YouTube. I still have a bit of nervousness around it, but I think I've grown as a YouTuber as well. But we're growing in all sorts of ways. The first time that you drove a car, the first time that you walked, the first time that you used a knife and fork, the first time that you used chopsticks, right? Fortunately, we improve at all of these things. And your thinking can also improve to an extent that you can not recognize who you were a long time ago. But one of the amazing things with thinking is that you can transcend that anxiety, that you can not be afraid to express a thought, that you can think for yourself. And I think that's one of the great things about coming into your 40s and 50s, is that you start to, once you don't care what people think, but you have a stronger sense of yourself and a stronger capability, a stronger capacity to think properly and carefully about things. And that's very, very valuable in true crime. It's very valuable that you can stand apart, almost like Sherlock Holmes. You can stand apart and look into a situation and almost like, I'm not saying you put your hands over your ears and you don't listen to what anyone else is saying, but that you're able to focus in such a way that you can almost like see through the walls, you can see through the layers, you can see through the covering up and the words that are used to conceal. And through your experience and your knowledge of social nuance, you can have this penetrating gaze. And isn't that an amazing skill to take that, in terms of true crime, to take that into the rest of your life? Be a real person that other people can see, and you can see them. I just think it is quite astonishing. So the quality of our decision making can improve. As a true crime case progresses, our decision making also needs to improve. We need to start excluding things and including other things, and we need to get better and better and sharper as we approach this point that inevitably we reach the finish line of a particular case. Overall, what this guy says in this article, as I say, fantastic article in the New Scientist, is that no one age is better than the other. All of those phases have something really great going for them. I don't know whether you should knock the baby phase where you're thinking originally, where you're able to process massive amounts of information, where you're able to come up with a language, where you're able to recognize the world that you live in, where you're able to adapt to the world that you live in. Some of us lose those capacities very early on. We can't adapt anymore. We refuse to see what's in front of us. We can't learn another language, or we can't change the way we speak about certain people or certain things. We can't make mistakes. I mean, babies are making mistakes all the time. Sometimes as adults, we just refuse to make a mistake. We refuse to acknowledge a mistake when, babies learn by making mistakes and applying the scientific method. In a weird way, you can learn the most rapidly if you sort of have this gleeful thing of, I want to make lots and lots of mistakes so that I can learn really, really quickly. So if you wanted to try something completely new that you'd never done before, such as surfing, I'm talking about not online, but on an actual wave, and you have the psychology of, I don't want to make a mistake, I don't want to fall off my board, you're going to learn a lot slower than if you go out there kind of going, I want to make mistakes, I want to fall off lots of times, because every time I fall off, I'm going to get better at surfing, right? Of course, as adults, we don't want to sort of be running around, stubbing our toes, falling over, crashing into things. We want to be more effective. But in a weird way, it is a little bit sad that in certain other areas where we don't know things, and every time there's a new true crime case, we are given a new set of circumstances. We shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes, although I do think as you become more and more well-versed in true crime, it shouldn't take you very long to start to see where this is going. And you shouldn't need to stub your toe and fall over things. If you're a true crime rocket scientist, you ought to go, okay, I can see what this is, right? Let's look at some of your comments. I see we're on about 2 hours, so I'm about to end this off. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 likes. I'm surprised there's still 1,000 people in here. I thought people would depart very quickly as we went into the subject matter. Bats, rats, love, hate. Says mistakes are fine if we learn from them. Lauren Noel, no bandages necessary for this case. Bria says experience is irreplaceable. Thanks, Sageti. Robbie Robin, I've always wanted to try unicycling. I must say that kind of scares me. I just feel like I think I've tried it and it's just seems really, really hard. Juggling as well. But yeah, you've got to have an open mind. Every time you try a thing, you're learning. So why can't you learn new things no matter what age you are? Try something new. It's going to challenge your brain to learn, and your brain can learn and wants to learn. Anna says, agree, weird mom, my kids are 40 to 25. Raymond says, I can juggle, that's amazing. With how many things? Wendy Farrell, I can juggle, that's good. Quite a few jugglers here. Masterful manner, I made many mistakes but learned so much. Yeah, the more mistakes you make, the more you learn. Learning statement analysis, okay. Corrine Howard, so where are we now? Joe Mama, what a wonderful group of people here. Well, if you want to go with this wonderful group of people on Patreon, head on to patreon.com/TCRS. It's a good community there. Lauren Noel Hall, parenting is the best teacher in life. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm a parent to a dog. Yeah, I actually want to talk a little bit about, you're going to laugh, but the Chris Watts case through my dog coming into contact with another dog that was, or a female at a particular time of the year, if you get my drift. But probably tomorrow, I think I'm going to do a live on the Barry Morphew case, and I want to talk intertextuality. So are there any of you here that are interested in the Barry Morphew case? Well, I'll see you guys tomorrow. KK Heflin says, it's a great group of people who are intelligent without trolls, refreshing. Nonna says, I use true crime to relieve stress. I'm an ICU nurse. Now I can imagine that. I'm sure that you've had a lot of stress lately. Daphne, thanks so much, Daphne. I told you that you're the true crime prophet writing the true crime Bible. Everyone wants to hear what you have to say in general, not just one specific case. Thanks, Daphne. You know, someone left a review saying the most authentic voice in true crime. Maybe that one day that'll be updated to, I don't know how that would play out. The true crime prophet, I don't know. But anyway, thanks a lot for that. Looks cold there. It has been cold. We've just had a huge cold front move through from Cape Town, but bringing a lot of rain, the first rain that we've had all winter. Literally haven't had a drop of rain, and now my water tank is overflowing. So I'm really happy about that. My garden's happy. Just my dog that's not particularly happy because he didn't go for a walk today. He expects to go for a walk every day, and I'm happy to do that because it gets me out going for a walk as well. Lots of jugglers here. Okay, let's look at some of your last comments. So if you want to hear about the Barry Morphew case, put a 1, and if not, a 2. Let's see how many don't want to hear about Barry Morphew. So I want to talk about something intertextual to that case, and specifically I want to talk about the CCTV footage that actually shows him stopping, I think it's a black truck, and getting out, going to the back and taking out a garbage bag, putting it in a receptacle by the side of the road. I want to talk about what's actually happening there, and then take it even further than that. So that's essentially what that analysis is going to be about. Okay, thanks a lot for your interest, guys. the case is heating up. I do find it really interesting where we are in the Summer Wells case that's sort of starting up, it's firing up, and the Barry Morphew case that is firing up in a different way in that it's now ready to be heard in court, or everything that's happened is being revealed. I really find juxtaposing the two cases very worthwhile, and I hope some of you are making that transition. Even if you're not interested in that case, try and pay some attention to it. It'll help you to understand the Summer Wells case even better. So that's it from me on day 60 on this case. I want to thank you guys for your support. I want to thank you, those of you who've put up super chats. Thank you very much. I also want to thank my mods, including some of you who are, celebrating your anniversary in the French Riviera. Linda says, "I'm just going to say your humility is beautiful." Thanks a lot. Thanks everybody. Thanks guys for your comments. Just want to see if there are a couple of my mods that I can just acknowledge here. I think you guys are here. I don't know if Bria is still here. It is quite late. But if you are, Bria, I hope everything's... Oh, you are there. Okay. She says, "I love how TCRS is so fearless and goes after guys. TCRS stands up and stands strong." Thanks a lot. Bria, you must log off and go and have a nice glass of wine with your husband. And JC, I don't know if you're still here, but thank you for making it. Sharon Tuck, also good that you made it as well. To everybody else, I think there's still about 1,000 of you here. I need to go and have dinner, so I'm going to be logging off. But thank you guys for making it, and I'll see you guys next time.